And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eugene Stefanov. I'm part of the marketing team at Perficient, and I'm very excited that you've joined us for today's webinar, in which we'll discuss the 5 most significant improvements in Argus Safety 8.1. Before we move on to a brief overview of Perficient, I'll mention that we are recording today, so in the next day or so, we'll be sure to email you with information on how to access this presentation. Because this webinar is shorter, we will not be answering questions during the presentation, but you are welcome to submit questions in the chat box on the left-hand side of your screen, and we'll respond via email or a phone call if you prefer. All right, a little bit about Perficient. So who are we? We are a consulting firm that delivers digital experience, business optimization, and industry solutions. The work we do helps cultivate and captivate customers, as well as drive efficiency and productivity. We have numerous locations across the US and Europe, as well as offshore facilities in India and China. We were founded in 1997, and we are a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ, and we have about 3,000 employees. We formed strategic partnerships with major technology vendors and also have dedicated solution and industry practices. One of these industry practices is, of course, life sciences. This graphic here shows our depth of experience. You can see that we have relationships with 37 of the world's largest life science companies. I won't go into more detail about our experience on this call, but you are welcome to look at this slide more closely when you receive the link to the presentation. All right, now that I've covered the housekeeping items and told you a little bit about Perficient, I'd like to pass it over to today's speaker, Indy Ahluwalia.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. As Eugene mentioned, my name is Indy Ahluwalia. I am the lead SME here for safety in Perficient. Previously, I've worked for several pharma companies and biotech companies. I currently, within Perficient, do safety implementations, the trainings, and any upgrades or any regulatory advice as well. So today, what I really want to talk about is Argus 8.1. Argus 8.1 was kind of a little bit of a shock when it came out. It was there were some significant changes in the back end, which we'll go into in a bit more detail later. And also, for the first time, there were some visual changes on the front end, which was a nice relief. Unfortunately, it still looks exactly the same, except for users of Argus will notice the changes. So, like I said, version 8.1 was quite a bit of a shock with the changes. What we have found, or what is there in the release notes, is that there were 319 bug fixes from the version 8.01. Also from 8.01, there were 68 new features, and also there were 3 features which were removed. To be honest, those ones that were removed weren't a big loss. Of the 68 new features, the majority of them were to do with E2BR3, but to do with the Japanese E2BR3, and we can really look at that in the next slide. So, the 5 most significant changes. We're going to do a little demo so I can show you what the new Argus 8.1 looks at. But I just wanted to give you the 5 so you can see it here. The first one was the COM breakup. And so what that meant is the actual installation file for Argus was split. This is a good thing. In general, it means that we can have a quicker installation. Validation can be quicker. You also don't need to install bits of Argus that you don't necessarily want. The second thing, obviously, I went through is I was talking about earlier was the E2B R3 support for Japan. So this new version, 8.1, can support the sending of cases to Japanese authorities in the R3 format. And that's what the majority of the changes were. The other big thing was interchange. So the interchange mapping has actually moved into 3 different areas. 2 of them are in Argus console, and the other one is actually still on the server, and that's that's kind of what's happened there. There have been case form changes, so there is now null flavors within Argus, and these are the changes on the front end, which you can see. And also there have been changes to the naming conventions within Argus as well. This means that if you have got any documentation which says one field label, it might actually be called something completely different now. So I'm just going to try and share my screen, and we can go look at Argus. Sorry about that, it's looking. Okay, so this version of Argus we have here is a multi-tenant system. So those of you who use a single tenant system, you may not have seen this login screen. And obviously we have separate enterprises for Argus. Now, like I said, for Argus, the changes are minimal. So the actual schema of Argus looks exactly the same. As you can see here, it's still the dark blue and the light purpley color or grey color, depending on your screen. But when you look at a case now within Argus, you'll see that there are subtle changes. On the case form. So, firstly, you can see that there are now these NF, these null flavor options here within Argus. Now, what that means is, what this actually does is, if you click a null flavor button and you select the drop-down menu, you can now have all the different null flavor values which are associated with that field. Now, this in conjunction with something else which was added in the 8 series, which was the flexible data recategorization area, that you can then configure exactly which null flavors you are required for that particular field. That makes it very flexible if there are any changes to any regulation for the null flavors, which is quite a nice thing to have. The other thing that has noticeably changed is you'll notice now Argus has gone away from saying E2B. So what it will say is ICSR. So for instance, here we have ICSR pending. In the work list, we have bulk ICSR transmit instead of bulk E2B transmit. And so there are those changes within that, those menus. Also, in the product screen, you'll see that there are the new additions which have come from the new US FDA guidelines. Also, within the product screen, you will have the new IDMP fields. Obviously, they're not active with anything, but they are available. So the substance information, the product name parts information, is all there ready to be once all the IDMP fields are available. Then you can add those. Now, in the Argus console screen, this is where we'll see the bigger changes. So one of the things I was talking about earlier was the ESM being split into 3. So in system configuration, you can now see, if you have this option enabled, is interchange mapping. From here, you are able to now configure your profiles for ESM mapping. You can do your ICSR codes translations. You can copy profiles, and obviously if you need to change those profiles, you can change those profiles. So you can now do this from this side. Now, the other bit that has been brought over to the front end of Argus is the folder configuration for the ESM folders. They are now in the reporting destination. So if I go to the reporting destination, and I go to EDI, you can now see we have the incoming, outgoing folders and the ICSR attachment outgoing folder. So these can now be configured in the front end. So the only thing that needs to be configured in the server is now just the service, which should make life a little bit easier. Now, when I was talking about those null flavors, I did mention the flexible data recategorization screen. Now, for those of you who have not been privy to the Argus 8 line, you may not have seen this. If you have seen this and you've spoken to me, you will know that this is literally my most favorite thing of Argus ever. So within the screen, you can add columns and translate codes so that they mean different things to different languages or even different reporting instances. So for instance, we have accidental exposure, which has an Argus internal code. So we'll have an Argus internal code of 1, and in English that means dermal, but then in Japanese it has its kanji. You could add another column here to say German, and you could have the German, etc., etc. So it means that you can configure it to exactly what you want. So if this was, for instance, let's go to patient. Go to ethnic group. So here, for instance, you can see on ethnic group, we actually have an NCI code, we have an English and a Japanese. So you may have another code that you wish to use instead of the NCI code, but what this will mean is that Argus knows that this is the code, and dependent on where you're sending it to, it will configure it to show that either on the screen or within the reports, and that can be configured through the profile. Now, going back to the null flavors, you can see here we actually have null flavors within here. Now, for here, we have the unknown, asked but unknown, not asked, masked, and no information. Now, you will have here different sets. So you can see here we have NF set 1, NF set 2, etc., all the way up to NF set 8. And you'll see that they've got a 1 or a blank dependent on if they should be in that set. So if you, for instance, had another null flavor which you wish to add, maybe something like positive infinity, which is one that could potentially be added, and it needed to be part of a particular set, you could add it to a set here, and then the clever part of this is that if you go to field properties, I believe, and choose, let's say, reporter, and reporter first name. On that particular field where we could select the null flavor, here you can select which null flavor set is required for that particular field. So it's all quite clever. You can go into the code list and the flexible recategorization, add a particular null flavor, or maybe even you wanted to create a new null flavor set 9, and you could add that null flavor set to the particular field value that you field that you wish to put it onto. On here, you'll also notice, like I said, E2B has gone, and so now, if you were to select, if you wanted those little E2B blue buttons, it will now be a little blue button with ICSR in there. Now, like I said, the majority of the changes were to do with the R3 R3 changes for Japan. Now, I know a question that people will be asking is, oh, well, how about Europe? So the next version of Argus, well, not version, the next patch for Argus is assumed to come around November time, maybe a little bit before November, so that we can use that patch to create the EMA R3 profile. The Argus functionality means that you can technically send R3 files, but it will require a lot of work, and it would not be verified by Oracle as to if we could send those R3 files to the EMA. So if you are looking for, we want to go to a version which just sends it to the EMA, then it's probably going to be the next patch version. And I do stress it's a patch and not a version like 8.1. So the expectation is not 8.2. It will be something like 8.11 for the EMA profiles. So let's go back into Argus. Some of the other things that are available in the 8 series, 8 line, which you may, if you're on the 7 line, you will not potentially have heard about before, is the BIP module. The BIP module is an attached module to Argus. It's not fully integrated, but it is separate, but the information does pass from Argus to BIP. And BIP basically creates 3 different reports. It can create a PSUR or a PBRA, a DSUR reports, and they are configurable, and they look a lot nicer as well. So they're in color, for instance. If you've ever used a PSUR report in Argus, they're black and white, but in these colors you can add little logos on there. The output is not dissimilar to what is in the Argus native reports. It's just that you can configure them, whereas the reports that are in Argus, which are now called Argus native reports, fortunately they can't be configured as much as those reports. One of the other things in the 8 line was the B2B module. So the industry standard with Argus tends to be that we'll use Axway as the E2B sender. Argus actually comes with its own Oracle B2B. To be honest, I have not used it yet, and it's not because it's inferior in any way to Axway or is better than Axway. It's not that at all. It's just that as far for the implementations that we have currently done, we do use the industry standard, which is Axway, but it does bring some competition in, obviously, bundled in with Argus itself. Just to give you a bit more information on the Argus suite itself, there are 2 versions. Well, no, there are 2 versions. You can get Argus Standard or you can get Argus Enterprise. With Argus Enterprise, you can have Argus Analytics, which you'll be able to go into better details. You can go into your scientific questions. It includes Argus Insight as well, where you can do your KPIs, etc. within Argus. Argus also is capable of linking in with the Empirica suite. So if you wanted to do any of the signal detection or the signal generation stuff, you could use the Empirica suite as well. Now, I know that was pretty brief. I just really wanted to go through the main points in 8.1. If you do have questions in regards to the whole 8-line series, I can obviously have a meeting with you so we can see it in better detail. And we can schedule a demo. Also, within Perficient, we have a cloud hosting environment. So if you are interested in putting your Argus onto a cloud or any other system onto a cloud, and for us to host it, we do have those options too. Back to you, Eugene.
Great. Thank you, Indy. So I just wanted to, before we end, share a couple of resources that we have available to you. On our website, you'll find a variety of guides and white papers, along with webinars. You can see a couple here. We have a guide on Argus safety that talks a little bit about the history and why it makes a good system. And there's also a signal management piece up there as well. We have several webinars that are coming up, including something on validation and the business considerations for clinical study migration, and that'll be presented by our clinical data management practice. We also are hosting a webinar with Oracle that will discuss Oracle Data Management Workbench and about the features and benefits of that system. So you can register for those on our website. If you have additional questions, you can email Indy directly through this email address. We'll send you the webinar recording probably today or tomorrow, and we'll also follow up with the message asking if you'd like to know more information about Argus 8.1 or if you need any assistance with anything. So just please look out for that and feel free to share that with your colleagues. Aside from that, I think we're all set for today's webinar. I know that we had a couple of questions that came in. We'll follow up with you offline. So don't be surprised to hear from us. Once again, thank you so much for joining today's call, and we look forward to having you join future webinars. Thanks so much, Indy, and thank you so much, folks, for attending.